Hello, welcome to our Road to the Revolution PowerPoint hosted by Calvin and Hobbes. Just full disclosure, there will be bad cartoon impersonations in this video. Hobbes, listen up. I've got to do this presentation on the Declaration of Independence. No problem. I always say there's no better way to understand something than to experience it firsthand. Well, what's that supposed to mean? Never mind. Let's go see our friend Marvin. Marvin, we need a favor. The kid and I need a transport back to the American colonies of 1763. Back in time? Good choice. I will be blowing up the modern Earth in just a few seconds. It obstructs my view of Venus. Please step inside the aluminum Q-46 space modulator. That looks like a cardboard box to me. Just get in. Oops! Too far back. Amazing! It's 1763. Yes, 1763. The American colonies. The colonists have just enjoyed a long time of freedom, kind of like when your parents leave us alone for the day and we get to run the house while your dad's off fighting battles at the office. The last battle was spent defending the colonies. The king has had a hard day at the office, and now he's broke, so he makes the Proclamation of 1763. Do any of you guys remember why the king would be broke by 1763? Well, he would be broke due to the French and Indian War. So because of the French and Indian War, he makes the Proclamation of 1763. And the king says, "Listen, now I can't defend you if you're scattered all across the land, so don't move out past the Appalachian Mountains. You got me?" So essentially what the king is doing is he is blocking the colonists from spreading out westward, from going further out to territory that would be more disputed with France, even after the war just ended, and especially due to the location of Native Americans out there and wanting to avoid having to pay for his army to protect the colonists further. So the king issues the Proclamation of 1763. Those colonists don't look too happy with that. They're not, but they haven't seen the worst yet. Let's see some more from later years. Flash forward to 1764. The king makes the Sugar Act. He says, "Listen, now I'm broke from fighting all these wars like the French and Indian War in your defense. So to pay me back, I say you're going to have to pay me money. I said money for all the sugar and other luxuries you get from other countries. You got me?" So essentially what the king is saying is to increase the revenue, he's going to tax all the sugar and luxury that they get from other countries, especially from England. Flash forward another year to 1765. The Quartering Act. So the king says, "Listen, now I got these soldiers that are going to stay with you. While they're here, you're going to feed and house them for me. You got me?" So essentially what the king is saying is that if there's ever a soldier that needs to stay in your home, you would have to give them a spot to stay, and you would need to feed them on your dime, on your money. So if there was a soldier who knocked on your door, you would have to house them. How would you feel in that situation? Next up was the Stamp Act. "Listen," the king says, "now I'm still broke, so you're going to have to pay me money for a stamp. I said for stamps that has to go on any papers you use. It works fine back in England, so it'll do good here too. You got me?" And so the stamps weren't solely for things like we consider stamps today for mailing documents. That would be on any paper product. So even things like playing cards, a deck of playing cards would have to pay for the Stamp Act, so any paper goods. Man, this is unfair. Ooh, I hate the government. That's it. All the colonists were angry, but they used different ways to show their anger. Listen, Doc, you can't take our money without us letting us speak in Parliament. Well, that's taxation without representation. So some of the colonists protested because they didn't feel it was right for them to be taxed without giving them a voice in their own government by giving them representatives in their version of Congress called Parliament. Other colonists got a little bit angry. They said, "All right, Buster, now you listen. If you're going to keep taking our money, we're going to stop buying the goods you take it for. A boycott. Ha ha." So a boycott, rather than spending money on the tax goods like sugar, like stamps, they would refrain from buying those and hurt them where it really counts, in their pocketbook. Others may have gotten a little bit more physical. "I say, Mr. Fudd, I'm here to collect your taxes." "I hate the government." So essentially what's going on here is a lot of tax collectors were tarred and feathered, where warm tar, which can definitely do damage, which is definitely hazardous, and then in addition to having the hot, sticky, dangerous tar on you, they would often throw feathers or other debris that would stick to the tar. So not only could it hurt, but it's also humiliating. So the king backed off, but soon came back with Parliament's Townshend Acts. So those Townshend Acts led to a couple of acts of rebellion that we'll get into in some of our next topics, which were the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. But for right now, all I want you to remember is that both of these acts definitely led to rising tension between the English colonists and between the British. So the king was mad about especially the Boston Tea Party, so he set more acts in place that were called the Intolerable Acts by the colonists, that they were intolerable, they couldn't take it. So because of those intolerable acts, such as closing the Boston port so that no trade could come in and out until the colonists paid off the debt from dumping the tea, so basically the First Continental Congress got together. Now at this point, the colonists weren't ready to break off and form their own country yet. After all, they did consider themselves British, and they still wanted to mend their relationship. But they met to discuss their options. Then along came the King George's response. Was he wanted to kind of crush the rebellion before it took place. And that's when he sent troops to gather some of the supplies, the weapons that were being stored in Concord, Massachusetts. Except the colonists got the word of it. Paul Revere went and spread the word along with some of his partners that night. And the next morning, the battles of Lexington and Concord happened, which were the first two battles in the American Revolution. And even though the colonists lost badly at Lexington, they were prepared and ready, and they won their first battle of the Revolution in Concord, and that gave them confidence that they could put up a fight against the British. After that, when the battles had already broken out, the Second Continental Congress got together. This time they were a little bit more split between whether they wanted to declare their independence or if they wanted to still mend their relationship. But one thing that helped push them over the edge was these persuasive pamphlets that Thomas Paine wrote called Common Sense. And they thought and explained that it was unnatural for a large country to be ruled by a smaller one that's much further away, across the whole Atlantic Ocean. So the people were convinced. Now, that doesn't mean all the people. That means that enough were convinced where in 1776, 5 delegates wrote their reasons for independence, even though there were still a good number of people who were loyalists or loyal still to Great Britain. And here's an image. You can see this is our Declaration of Independence, especially signed by John Hancock, the President of the Second Continental Congress, who signed it so large that King George III could read it without his spectacles. Alright, thanks for watching The Road to the Revolution. I hope you learned. Thank you.